Governor Tony Evers signed a bill into law that will pump more state money into cities, towns, and villages and gives Milwaukee the chance to stave off potential bankruptcy by increasing the sales tax. The bipartisan compromise on shared revenue included two major components: state funding for local governments and for K-12 education. The governor signed the bill at a ceremony in Wausau. Evers stressed that this bill includes at least a 20% increase in funding for most local governments. It also supplies an increase of more than $1 billion for K-12 education. He called the compromise a win for Wisconsin.
So folks, here's the gist. This compromise is a big deal for our kids, our families, and our communities across our state. It's my job as governor to always work to do the right thing for the people and communities of the state, and this is the right thing for Wisconsin.
Well, joining us on the show right now, one of the architects of that shared revenue bill, it's Representative Tony Kurtz. First off, thanks for the time here today.
Oh, no, thanks for having me, Lance.
I want to talk a little bit about what it took to get this across the finish line. Obviously, the Milwaukee referendum was a big talking point. How hard was it to find a compromise there?
I think from the beginning, it was refreshing that everybody was at the table, first of all. And I think everybody, Republicans, Democrats, on both sides of the aisle, wanted to come up with a solution to help the city of Milwaukee. And I think we did that. Something we've talked about, I've talked with you, obviously the referendum was a core value of Republicans. It always has been if people want to raise their taxes. But let's be honest, there was a good compromise with the governor. Something that's very important to a lot of our members was school choice and charter schools, and that's something that the governor was willing to compromise on. And so I think that's, at the end of the day, it was something that we revisited to give the Common Council and the County Board the option to take that to 2/3 vote. So I think at the end, we got there. That's the most important thing. Now, obviously, the city and the county have to do their part and get it across the finish line over there.
What is your confidence that they will pass this?
Oh, I think they will. They know the urgency to get this done. And I know the city and the county, the leaders over there, I mean, obviously I know they're dealing with a lot of internal issues, but I think at the end of the day, this is a chance for Milwaukee to save itself. And in my humble opinion, they would be very foolish and short-sighted if they did not do it. And I think they realize that.
Some of the city and county leaders over there have already talked about maybe legally challenging some of the provisions within that bill. What does that do in your mind to the bill itself, and kind of how do you see that proceeding?
I'll be very honest, and I've said this to a lot of people. I've asked people that have been around Madison for decades, and I said, when was the last time that you saw the speaker, the majority leader, the mayor of Milwaukee, the common council president, the county board chair, the county board executive, all sitting at the same table together? They said they don't recall. So the point that all those folks, all of us were sitting around the table, and we came to the same conclusion. We compromised, we worked together, and now to somewhat, I want to say, backtrack. It's a little disingenuous in my humble opinion. We'll see where that plays out. I think we did a very good job with the city and the county, and obviously the governor signed it, and I think it's going to be a little hard pressed for them to reverse some of those. So.
Originally, this was just about shared revenue, but then education came into play here. When did that come about, and when did you kind of realize this was all going to have to be morphed together into kind of one mega bill, if you will?
Well, it's interesting. Senator Fiskowski, and I give her so much credit, her tenacity. We started this, something we talked before, really late last summer, and it was just truly shared revenue. And in our case, it was to truly help rural communities. And it has. Obviously the Milwaukee piece came in, and then the school funding and the school choice. And in the end, I want people to truly understand this was a compromise. This is what working across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats, at the end of the day, I think we have a great product, not only for rural communities like mine, but statewide. It's obviously for schools. It's incredibly important for shared revenue for our local communities and for the city and county of Milwaukee. At the end of the day, I am very proud of the effort that everybody put forward to get this done. And I'm glad it turned out the way it did. I'm glad there's so many different avenues, because that's the way good deals get done. Everybody gave a little bit, everybody got something, and I think for the state of Wisconsin, I hope people that are watching truly understand the compromise that happened, and as a state we should be proud of that.
for the public education component of this K through 12, there's an increase of about $1 billion in this next budget. Was that a number you were considering going to originally? Is that more than what you were originally anticipating wanting to accept?
It's a number I think internally we were talking about that number. Obviously, we have negotiations with the Senate and obviously negotiations with the governor. So I'm very happy with that number. I certainly hope school districts are. I mean, obviously the governor is very proud of that number. He's touting that. I think as Republicans, we're proud of that number as well. And so at the end of the day, once again, it's great that we're helping our public schools. Obviously, the schools are tremendous in my area. I got great schools, and I'm glad we provided that funding for them.
How important was it for you to get the voucher program number up as well? Because that number increases.
You know, for a lot of our members, you know, I don't have a lot of those schools in my district, but for a lot of our members, that's very important to bring them up. I know when we did the road show around the state, they did a very good job of getting out and saying, hey, this is the need we have. And so I'm glad it's helping all schools, not just the charters in the schools, but it's just good that everybody's getting lifted up to get the much needed funding that they all need. They truly do.
When it comes to this bill, shared revenue and education, at the end you touched on it a little bit, but how would you classify in totality those talks were? What was kind of the nature of all of the discussions between, you know, yourself, the Republican leaders in both houses, and the governor?
It's at times it was tense. I'm not going to, you know, sugarcoat that. But one thing that I was very proud about, and I think it gets lost in the discussion, is we do need to sit around a table. We need to have good, honest discussions. Some of those discussions are going to be very uncomfortable, and we had those. But at the end of the day, we collectively realized the need to get this done for our state. And I think that's why we had buy-in from all parties to say this is too important to let it fail. And that's what I'm incredibly proud about, is that even during the times where you thought, my gosh, this is going to fall apart, we kept persisting that, you know what, let's have another meeting. Let's take a break. Let's take a time out, and let's get back to the table tomorrow night. Let's get back to the table to figure out how we can come up with some common ground. And we did that, and I'm very proud of that, like I said several times.
This is obviously a huge part of the budget, and you are on the JFC, the Budget Writing Committee. In totality, this whole process, has it been what you expected, harder than expected, as far as coming together, finding compromise throughout on all components of the budget?
It's refreshing because, once again, it's interesting. In my very rural area, I hear a lot from my wonderful constituents about, you know, why don't you guys work together more? Well, we are. And I personally would love to see, and nothing against you, you do a very good job of covering, but I would like to see more stories on things that we are working together. And unfortunately, I think a lot of stories, it's more of what we disagree on. And there are things we disagree on. I mean, that's just fact. But there are a lot more things that we do agree on. And just like the shared revenue bill, at the end of the day, we had a wonderful bipartisan vote. And I sure hope as we progress through the budget that we also have a very bipartisan vote on the budget, and obviously signed by the governor at the end.
Well, I know it's a busy time for you. We appreciate your time here this week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Lance. Appreciate it.